You're listening to the Things of That Nature podcast. Coming to you from Denver, the Mile High City, is me, your host, Rockshana. I invite you to join me for truly honest, passionate, and fun talks that motivate, invigorate, and maybe inspire. When you're ready in the Mile High, the sky's the limit. Everything and anything goes. So let's start talking about things of that nature. Hey everyone, thanks for tuning into this episode of the Things of That Nature podcast. I'm your host, Rockshana. Today I have with me someone that has overcome and also faced a struggle that many people around the world, no matter what age, race, whatever, go through this. Some people admit it, some people don't. And she has other courses she does too. Today we have Bracha Gietz. Hi, Bracha.
Hi, great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you get a lot of people that ask you to repeat and pronounce your name for them?
Yes, exactly right. I do. Especially because, the last name has an O in it that you don't even pronounce. So, yeah.
Right. What's the origin of your name?
I think that Getz is from Austria-Hungary, where like German, there was an O in names that nobody pronounced. I think that's how it goes. And the first name, Bracha, is a Hebrew name that means blessing.
Neat. That's different. I always find it interesting when someone's name has another meaning, like your first name means blessing. That's pretty cool.
Yes. I actually picked the name. I wasn't born with it, so I picked it. Yeah.
You picked your name?
Yes.
How did that go? What is that typical, or what's the background on that?
Well, when I went to Israel, I was learning about Judaism, and they asked me what my Jewish Hebrew name was, and I didn't have one. I wasn't given one at birth, so I picked that as my name. And so I love that name, blessing. So that's it. Yeah. So Bracha is the name in Hebrew of blessing.
Of blessing. Yeah. Neat. That's cool. So do you frequently visit Jerusalem?
Well, I grew up Jewish, but not like an observant Jew. In other words, I didn't know that much about Judaism. But when I was 22, I went to Israel, and that summer, I was actually in my first year of medical school, and I just had a 6-week vacation between my first and second year, and I ended up loving what I was learning so much that I ended up not returning to the United States. I stayed there. I took a year's leave of absence from medical school, which I just then extended, and I stayed there for 10 years. I lived there, and later I met my husband, and I had children while I was living there. So it was a very exciting life and a big change, a big detour in my life that I made at that point at 22. So that's when I became, much more involved in a spiritual type of life. That became the main point of my life, my main purpose. So that shift happened, and that's when I took on that name, and that's when all these things changed in my life. Yeah.
Wow. That's a big choice that you took.
Yeah, it was huge. But you see, I was studying to be a psychiatrist, and I was always searching. I was searching in spiritual directions before, but I couldn't find the missing puzzle piece. I looked into many different religions because I was just always searching for the purpose of life. I couldn't believe that what we saw was all there was to it. I couldn't believe that we would get up each day life was about going to work, to make money, to live another day, to live another day. Like, what's the reason for all this? I had to know the answer. So I just kept searching into different spiritual disciplines. I was involved in social justice movements, environmentalism. I had graduated from Harvard, and I was going on to medical school, But the interesting thing is that even though it looked like I was headed on a course of great success in life, I mean, the fact was I was getting more and more miserable in my life. That's when, during that time period, I had developed eating disorders, and I would say I call it food addictions. And I looked like, on the outside, I looked like a successful person, and within, I was getting more and more unhappy and feeling like life was purposeless. And here I was wanting to become a psychiatrist, and I didn't even understand what the purpose of life was. I felt, how could I help other people if I don't have clarity about the purpose of life? So I ended up going to Israel for that 6-week break, and I found a place for kind of late beginners for me to learn about my heritage in a way that I had no idea about, the mystical side of Judaism, the deep wisdom involved, all these things I knew nothing about. And I began to learn. And right away, like, my soul felt like it was getting the nourishment that it had been craving for all those years. And so that's what I'm sharing now in my life. It's been many years since then, and I've gotten to live a really wonderful life, a very joyful life. So I want to share with other people that the basis for many addictions, including, and it's very obvious with food addictions, eating disorders, that there's a spiritual nourishment that we're craving. And these addictions are actually messaging us that we are lacking something in our lives for real. We really are starving. So when a person keeps eating something and they just don't, it's like, it's not a problem to eat something like junk food. The problem is that we can't stop eating it. So the reason that a person can't stop eating it is because they want the pleasure to continue. If a person doesn't have enough pleasure in their lives, that's how addictions develop, because addictions bring temporary pleasure to us. They bring us that immediate comfort, immediate gratification. So if a person doesn't have enough other lasting pleasures in their lives, they get stuck on an addiction. So that's why I was fascinated by, why did my food addictions end when I found the spiritual nourishment that I was looking for? And I'm Jewish, but other people have other things that fill their souls. So I'm not saying that's for everybody. That was for me. So each person has a unique soul, and a uniquely beautiful and pure soul. Sometimes it's covered up with layers and layers of garbage, but we can all still reach that pure place. And when we give it the nourishment that it's craving, then it can shine. And there's also then the addictions can dissolve because there's no more reason for them, because the craving that we had is met. It's a genuine craving, and that craving is for spiritual nourishment. It's for lasting pleasure. So that's what I really want to share with the world.
That's a lot to share.
Yes, and if you want to hear about it, like, what I've learned, I think this is fascinating, and I hope, I think this is helping many people, is that the soul has 5 levels to it, and everybody's soul, every human soul, and when and we have 5 levels of pleasure that correspond to these 5 levels of the soul, and we can think of it as a pleasure ladder. On the most basic level, on the first rung of the ladder, are the physical pleasures that we all enjoy. And we enjoy them tremendously, and we're meant to enjoy them. Like, this world could have been designed with, let's say, food that was just all gray, colorless, and tasteless, and we would still survive. But this world was designed for our pleasure. So the food is colorful, and it has a beautiful aroma, and we're meant to enjoy it. We're meant to enjoy all the physical pleasures. The only problem is that when we don't have pleasures on the higher rungs, then we can sometimes get stuck on these physical pleasures because we don't have enough other pleasure in our life. So that's why for many people, I mean, for most people, diets don't work, and people are going on yo-yo dieting because they try this, they try that, without recognizing that it's a genuine spiritual hunger that needs to be met in order to overcome overeating and other addictions joyfully. And and it really is a joy, because all honestly, all that involves is adding more pleasure into one's life. That awareness alone helps to resolve the problems. So like other physical pleasures, like let's say a person's overeating, if they have the awareness about that, which everyone does. I think everyone knows when they're overeating. They know when they've had enough that satisfies them physically, and then they're just overeating after that. So like, let's say a person's overeating. If they start to ask themselves this one question, is it my body that is hungry or my soul? That awareness can change a person's life. So they can, for instance, they can try a different physical pleasure. Instead of just continuing to eat that junk food or whatever, they could turn on music. And I think you love dancing. They could start dancing. It's like all of a sudden you don't feel pulled to finish the bag of potato chips when you're dancing. You know, it's like changes everything. They could go outside and experience nature, just breathing nature in deeply. These are other physical things that a person can do to bring a variety of different pleasures into their lives, which are all on the physical level, but they're just different. So it helps a person get unstuck from the one pleasure that they're focused on. And eating is a really basic one, and it's so easy. So that's why it's probably the most common addiction there is, that people just overeat when they want more pleasure in their lives, you know, because they're bored, because they're stressed, for whatever, they're lonely, you know, all different reasons why people will overeat instead of eating because they're physically hungry, you know. So should I tell you about, you want to hear about the other levels?
Sure, go.
Yeah,
And these are
yeah.
levels that you went through or
Oh, the
faced?
other levels. So the most basic level on the pleasure ladder is physical pleasure, and the next level is love. And love is appreciating what's good in another. So when we do that, that's the second level of pleasure, and it brings each level up brings a more lasting pleasure. Like when we eat something, it doesn't last that long, the pleasure. We kind of have the pleasure while we're eating it, you know. But like these other pleasures are more lasting, and each level up brings a more lasting pleasure and a greater pleasure. So like love is, a person can bring love into their lives by, a person never has to wait for love. Like a person can just bring love into their lives by going out and appreciating other people. That's how a person brings more love in. And you know, there's always lonely beings. Like a person can, you know, visit shelters. A person, right now you can't during the pandemic, but like people can visit people in nursing homes or assisted livings. Or even if you can't physically visit a person now, you can call them on the phone, you can text somebody, anyone that's lonely. All of that will take a person up to a higher level of pleasure. And then on the third rung is meaning. Doing something good and meaningful in life is an even more lasting pleasure. On the fourth level is creativity. Doing something that adds, that brings out your own creativity, lets your soul shine, and you're doing, and it could also involve bringing children into the world too, and it can involve any type of artistic, creative thing that a person does, or any type of creativity. It's a powerful feeling to create. And the highest level of all is transcendence and awe, which comes from feeling connected to everybody and everything